Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to work out problems that deal with consecutive integers. So let's talk about this word first, consecutive. Consecutive just means one after the other. Consecutive integers differ by one. For instance, the integers 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. These are all consecutive integers because their values are separated by 1. We may also talk about consecutive even integers or consecutive odd integers. We'll get to that in a little while. For these problems, for consecutive integer problems, it may help to define a variable before describing the problem in words. Specifically, we'll refer to it as n. I will for this case. And just for assumption, let's say n is 2. We would then call the next consecutive integer n plus 1, which compared to 2 is one value larger, or 3. If I was dealing with 3 consecutive integers, the value of this integer is 2 units larger than the original number, or in this case 4. This is our initial setup, this n plus 1, n plus 2. This is our initial setup for consecutive integers. We'll work out an example dealing with even integers in a little bit. But let's look at one first, where we deal with consecutive integers. So here it says the sum of 3 consecutive integers is 147. We'll say n is the first integer, n plus 1 is the second, and n plus 2 is the third. Here's our initial setup for this problem. Now it says the sum of these 3 consecutive integers, so we have to write them out by adding them up. We're setting up a multi-step equation and we're going to solve it. The sum of 3 consecutive integers is 147. Hard part's over. Now we go in and solve it. N plus n plus n, I have 3n. I have 1 plus 2. And now the equation doesn't look as bad. We can solve this in 2 steps, taking away 3 from both sides. We have 3n equal to 144. Dividing this out, I have n equal to 48. So because the value of n is 48, that means n plus 1, the next consecutive integer, will be 49. And then n plus 2 will be 2 units larger than this value, which will be 50. So in summation, if you're adding 48, 49, and 50, 3 consecutive integers, the sum is 147. That's the setup for a problem such as this, dealing with consecutive integers. Let's look at one where we deal with consecutive even integers. General rule of thumb, this also works for dealing with consecutive odd integers, but we'll do the even one for this problem here. So the sum of 2 consecutive even integers is 118. So remember, consecutive even integers such as 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on. These are all separated by values of 2. So if I set my first variable as n, the next consecutive even integer will be n plus 2. Not n plus 1, because that would be a consecutive integer. This is 2 larger because we're dealing with even integers. And again, this setup also works for odd integers. So let's set this problem up. Their sum is 118. Combine like terms. Subtract 2. Move this down here. Last thing we do is divide, and we get 58. Now, if n is 58, consecutive even integer after 58 will be 60. I add these two numbers together, I will get 118. That takes care of dealing with consecutive even integers. And again, this same setup can also work for consecutive odd integers, because 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and so on, they're all separated by a value of 2. So consecutive even and consecutive odd integers can be set up the same way, versus the standard consecutive integer where you're separated by a value of 1. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later.